From the whole news to sports and now to our main conversation. In case you're just joining us right now, we promised to be giving you this conversation about, from the whole South Nyanza, the politics coming out of there. Former Chief Justice David Maraga, former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, both leaders eyeing the top seat for 2027 elections. But then, how will they maneuver this murky political world? Or basically getting into all that. Our guests are in studio. But then, before and even before I actually introduce them, let's listen in to, first of all, former CJ David Maraga and Jubilee Secretary General Kioni on what they had to say about these political changes.
Elections, we will talk about those things later. We are going to, we are talking, I told you, we are talking with people. It is, at the end of the day, you know, the choice is the people's choice. If you asked me, I will tell you, I mean, I'm the right one. The other one will also say it's the right one. At the end of the day, it is the people who will decide. I mean, just relax, wait. I mean, in due course, you will make up your mind yourself whether or not I'm a state project.
Raila Amolo Odinga alikuwa amepatiwa 1.3 million votes kupitia Jubilee. Ruto kutoka kwa mlima alikuwa amepata 3.7 million votes. Fanya hesabu, 1.3 plus 3.7 ngapi? 5 million votes. Hizo wamezitoa wakasema hawataki. 5 million votes. Na zimeingia kwa Matiang'i.
Right. Dismas Mukua, he's a political risk analyst joining us this evening. Thank you very much for making time. As well as Ishmael Nyeribo, he's an advocate and a governance analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for making time. Gentlemen, you've heard from the horse's mouth. Well, we didn't get to hear from Matiang'i himself. We'll be getting into his loud silence in a few, but then the sentiments. And there's a question that was thrown to former CJ, David Maraga. I'll start with you on that one. Being asked, are you a state project? And then he gave his response, which we've had. What are your thoughts on this, even for both? So that's the first one. What are your thoughts on, are both Matiang'i and Maraga a state project? And if so, if it is true, what kind of effect does that have on the country's politics?
Well, first of all, it would be erroneous to brand anybody as a state project. Because I think if you meet the constitutional requirements to run for any position in Kenya, you should come out and demonstrate your capacity and competence to run for an elective seat. And also it's erroneous to say that you're having two candidates from South Nyanza. Again, anybody who is qualified in Kenya. So you'd rather look at Kenyans who are qualified to run for the position of president in Kenya, and then go the extra mile and ask one fundamental question. What do they bring to the table? Okay. Like, for instance, the former Chief Justice Maraga has indicated that his unique selling proposition is the respect of the rule of law and order. And he says people can trust his decision-making capacity. And he's been doing town halls across, he started doing town hall meetings, yes, trying to popularize his candidature. But it appears that his candidature has not gained sufficient momentum if you compare to Dr. Fred Matiang'i. As we indicated earlier on, there is a loud silence coming from Dr. Fred Matiang'i's quarters, apart from Jeremiah Kioni, who seems to be giving some numbers which appear to be slightly voodoo. Because, you know, the way he's just throwing the numbers, one is not very sure of what he's talking about. But again, now one needs also to look at who is Dr. Fred Matiang'i? What does he bring to the table? Now, when you look at Dr. Fred Matiang'i, when the current president, William Samoei Ruto, had trouble with the President Kenyatta, then Matiang'i was given a huge responsibility. Yes. He was essentially the chair of the entire cabinet outside President Kenyatta. And during those 5 years, he demonstrated that he can actually run the nation. And people who followed governance said that he did a very good job. But he has not come out to give us a strategic narrative. In applied political communication, if you're running for any political office, you must develop a strategic narrative and tell people this is where Kenya is, this is where Kenya needs to be, and this is what I'm going to do to take it to the next level. Actually, a strategic narrative is some sort of a quick MBA program, because when you're running a company, you know you're at point A, you need to go to point B, what do you need to do?
Has former CJ curated that strategic narrative that you're talking about?
No, he has not done that. When it comes to the table, all he tells us...
None of them have been able to.
Yeah, you see, for Maraga, he comes, he says, trust me, I'll do this.
Okay.
And then he says that I'm a man with guts, that I was among the first judges across the world to nullify a presidential election. And he tells us, you can tell us you can take my word to the bank.
Yes.
But for Dr. Matiang'i, he has not yet come out to speak. So people don't know. In fact, as we speak, people don't know whether Dr. Matiang'i is actually running or not. Because the person who's been declaring his candidature is Jeremiah Kioni, Richard Onyonka, and a number of MPs from Western Kenya. Yes. So it's high time for Dr. Matiang'i to come out and pronounce himself and say, I'm running for president, and this is my unique selling proposition. This is my strategic narrative. If he doesn't do that, he'll discover that time has run, and he'll come as a late runner, and then he may not achieve a lot of ground.
And Yuribo, that's the thing. The documents that they held, both of them, for former CJ, you're the leader of the judiciary, for former Interior Cabinet Minister Fred Matiang'i, in the executive as well, but then now transitioning into politics. How will that transition look like, according to you, when he talks about you have to really curate this political structure moving forward?
Well, thank you. You know, one has been in, both of them have been in national administration, because
yes.
one in the one arm of government and
yes.
the other in the other one.
Yes.
And I think they both actually, we can say they both look like they have a chance. I mean, both gentlemen are fine, and they have qualities that are, some converge somewhere, others are parallel to each other in terms of qualities, but good qualities either way for both of them. I mean, when one is seen as a stricture, as a stickler to the rule of law, the other one is seen as a ruthless disciplinarian on governance issues. Mm-hmm. So those are two separate virtues that can be critiqued differently. They are both capable gentlemen, I believe. They are very strong. They come out. If you want to understand how strong the person of David Maraga is, for example, mm-hmm. you listen to his speech when he was speaking in his local dialect, yeah. and somebody, one of the, I think, MCS was trying to say it is the other. Just listen to the intonation. You can tell if people have energy or not, apart from sitting behind the High Court and the Supreme Court tables. Mm-hmm. Some of these people have a lot of energy. But then you look at Fred again, he's not here. You know, Fred is in, I think, Seattle or Washington, whatever. But why all this noise? Why the impact? And he's away. Who did he speak to and told them that he's going to run? And why are people all over saying, no, it is him? So you can see that leadership qualities do not need you to shout on top of the vehicle or on top of your house. It is leadership qualities that citizens have seen in these people.
I mean, and sorry to cut you short, Nyaribo, Kenyans would like to look at it in, there is what happens in the boardroom, as you put it, the kind of leadership style that you'd have in the boardroom style, and how you even talk your intonation. But then Kenyans are used to this political style of being on top of vehicles and actually, having certain taglines that you use every single time just to woo them. How do both of them maneuver this?
Yeah, Kirigita, both boardroom and on-site leadership is needed when you are a president. Mm-hmm. It is true that you need to meet the people, but it is also true that you need to sit people down and convince them of your policy before you actually go on top of the vehicle. So both are necessary, but excess of either of them is unacceptable. I don't want to lose my mind in showing you how the stature of Fred Matiang'i, for example, mm-hmm. is called upon. I mean, people are calling upon him when he's out of the country. At least Elder Maraga has gone to the people both here in Nairobi and in Nyamira and told them, you know, people are telling me. And I believe when the right time comes, you will make a choice. But Matiang'i has not said that. Can you see that? And yet, there are people shouting at funerals, completely, you know, trying to shut down the elder and telling him that this is a time for Matiang'i. So, does that show you that there are leadership qualities they are looking for that appear to be in Matiang'i? And when you look at the way he ran the Ministry of Information Technology, the way he ran the Communications Technology, the way he ran the Education Ministry, the way he ran the Interior Ministry. Which other ministry was that?
I think it was only 3.
When you, no, I think he had another ministry, you know.
No, 3.
Super CS, they call it. You can see how.
CS is not a ministry.
Look at how he handled those portfolios. This is the time when we had television broadcasting changed completely into digital, something that everybody did not imagine that it can happen. And then you look at education, what he did. Of course, we complain of CBC and all that, but apart from that, the way he ensured that you cannot steal an exam. How does it happen? So the way he ruthlessly implements his policy. The funny thing is, or the very positive aspect of his ruthless approach is it comes to pass. He makes sure that he seems to have an idea how to reach there. So I think most people, and this has nothing to do with Kisii, by the way, I think this is very clear. Most people are waiting for him to come here and say, oh, gentlemen, I have come because I've heard your call. You are telling me to do this. You are telling me to come forward. I am offering myself as a candidate. I think that is the time when we can properly articulate who amongst the two of them is likely, you know, to really come out and lead the country. And I think, to be fair to the Kisii people, they are becoming a beautiful girl now, and everybody seems to look at them.
Okay.
I think that is a token they cannot ignore. Right. I mean, they are smart people, so this is the time to exhibit that smartness. And this is the time to sit together and say, okay, and we have treated, I mean, I come from Kisii, and we have treated both of them, by the way, with a lot of respect. We don't think that any of them is lesser a human or lesser a better leader than another one. But so as it's a question of whose time it is right now.
So as it stands, according to you briefly, do you think both of them are going to transition seamlessly into the political world of this?
Kiriketa, you are asking very heavy questions, and you want me to very briefly say, to be honest, Maraga, for example, when you talk about politics, is different from, you know, like when you are in a courtroom or when you are in executive cabinet meeting, you know. Politics is like this. When you were Chief Justice, you nullified elections of a gentleman who comes from my area. That is a debt you have to pay. At least you have to do a bit of explaining. How could you hate our son so much? You nullified him. I mean, it may not sound well, but politics is not even anything sound anyway. It's not reasonable. I mean, you can see people, this Nyeri governor was saying, I don't want to see Ruto. Now, yesterday was saying, akaribishwe sana hapa Nyeri. So politics is different. So you may have nullified elections, and you may be very independent, and you may have set the judiciary into, you know, independence, and people trusted you. When it comes to politics, the mamas below the table are like, but he nullified our son's elections. Now, when you come to Matiang'i, he's not flawless either. When you want to run now into presidential elections, there are so many people who died. You did not observe the law. You disobeyed the court orders. How do we trust you? You are a kibaraka. You might be working for Uhuru Kenyatta. These are all things that they are carrying on their shoulders. And this time, unfortunately, if both of them come out as presidential candidates, there will be nothing like you are in a better cloth or you are clean or not. And it will be people challenging you to the core.
Right. And of course, these are things that even the Gen Z are looking at. In last year's June protests, we did see a number of young people say we'd want, you know, Matiang'i for reasons, you know, they were stating. But then wing the Gen Z voters, who are actually going to be quite the bunch of them when it comes to 2027, a number of them expected to be, you know, potential voters, wing this crop of voters would be different. Would you agree?
First of all, let me respond to what Ishmael has indicated. Chief Justice Emeritus Maraga has succeeded in strategic visibility. I mean, the last couple of days is getting very good attention. But the challenge with strategic visibility is that there is no messaging. So, you know, you may be doing all the tunnels, but at the end of the day, what message do people take home? You know, when you're a Chief Justice and Ishmael is a lawyer, in the courts you issue orders,
yes,
and people have no alternative but they have to listen to those orders. But in the political space, the only time you give orders is when the people have given you power. You have to persuade them. And so far, I've not seen that persuasion capacity coming from Maraga. And then he has also committed a fundamental mistake that Ishmael has mentioned, that a few days ago, he appeared to be very firm when he spoke in his mother tongue. The presidency is supposed to be a symbol of national unity. So the moment you start addressing people in your mother tongue, not oblivious of the role of the presidency, then people start asking questions that what kind of candidate are you? Although again, you know, these very early days, we have about 2.5 years to the presidential election.
Yes.
So he's got time to recalibrate. But again, he has not demonstrated the killer instinct. In the political space, if you want to win any elective seat, you must demonstrate to the entire world that in fact you've got this huge, insatiable appetite for this position. Even the way he speaks, there's a bit of a lack of energy. But again, he says he's still exploring his options. So he has not taken a decision. Now, coming to the germane issue of Gen Z, Gen Z are going to move the needle in the 2027 elections. But again, we must not assume that Gen Z are homogeneous. I mean, Gen Z in Kisumu or Nairobi, or even in Nairobi, Muthaiga, Lavington, Buruburu, they're not homogeneous. But a successful politician, whether you are running for MCA or whether you are running for president, you must identify the needs, interests and aspirations of the voters and craft a message aligned to their interests. You know, on average, the average voter in Kenya is a very rational human being, according to economics. I mean, for 4.5 years. But as you approach the elections, then they become victims of their tribal thinking. I mean, you recall during the Gen Z demonstrations, there were demonstrations almost everywhere in Kenya. But as soon as Mr. Raila Odinga said that he is donating a number of experts to join the administration, people from his stronghold said they're not doing mandamanos anymore. And when people asked them, so what is the deal here? They said, you guys calm down. We have donated some experts to this administration. You remember Gen Z were complaining about the state of the economy. They said, no, wait a minute. Mbadi is now the CS for finance. Give him time to turn around the economy. And it seems that Kenyans are victims of the Stockholm syndrome. The majority of us are falling in love with our captors, that we really embrace them. That is why when Mr. Raila Odinga pronounces himself, his word is as good as law. That is when former President Kenyatta pronounces himself, his word is as good as law, even for President Ruto. In fact, this conversation would even be more interesting if we say, assuming that President Ruto is not in the equation, former President Kenyatta is not in the equation, and maybe Mr. Raila Odinga and maybe Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, how would these candidates fare on their own? But at the end of the day, as we really approach these elections, anybody who wants to run for this political office must come up with a strategic communication anchored on research and data. Time is gone when you'll just go to a baraza and talk to people, and there's no two-way communication. People are not going to listen to that because the average Kenyan today is literate. However, as we approach the elections again, I may appear to be contradicting my own words, but as we approach the elections, the average voter becomes emotional and irrational. This is when they remember that they come from a particular hill, they come from a particular village, and as they approach the ballot box, they suspend logic, they suspend reason. That is not limited to Kenya. Tonight, the US President, Donald Trump, is about to announce a raft of tariffs.
Yeah.
And when he was running for office, he told Americans, inflation is very high, it's punishing. The cost of living is very high, it's punishing. Even told them the Russia-Ukraine war, I'll sort it out in a day. But what is the effect of the tariffs it's going to announce tonight? It's going to increase the cost of living. But because people have fallen in love with their captors, right now you go to the US, almost 9 out of 10, actually not 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 Republicans are defending Donald Trump. Yet they know that these tariffs are going to cause chaos in the economy. Now the same obtains in Kenya. If you go to parts of Lunyanza, the moment you have a selfie with Mr. Raila Odinga, you will win the party primary ticket and you'll be way to your National Assembly, whichever seat you are running for. This means...
So it means even for this, as coming on this one, so that we can also listen to what Senator Nyonka was talking about on the whole bit of matters, political parties, even for Matiang'i. Does it mean that the two would need to cling on to another political figure so that they can actually make it? He was giving an instance if there were no other political figures who are not in this race, will they survive? And now that brings me to that question of, will they survive if they do not cling to any other political figure we know?
I don't think your viewers have any time to waste. The answer is no. If they come and stand alone, they will not. And this is important for the Gen Z, because the Gen Z seems to be the scapegoat for each candidate today. They both seem to be drawing inspiration from the youngsters and the young people, you know, the Gen Z, as we call them. And this is a good, clear warning to the Gen Z that you need to do what Raila Odinga and William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta are doing. I mean, that click in terms of political leadership is arranged, is organized. You know, it's all about who are you grouping up yourselves with. There was a very plausible initiative by the youth when they decided to be speaking on Twitter Spaces, isn't it? X Spaces, so to say. And there were so many, the president had to head there because that is where the crowd is. So I think that the Gen Z, one, they must learn how to come together, and they must learn how to dodge these political bullets coming on their way. You cannot say, I'm not moving, you kill me if you want. You will die, by the way. So they need to, no, what I'm saying on this issue is, they need to learn how to cohesively stand together, always on their points. Then they must be registered as voters.
So that's for the Gen Z. Now,
I understand, I'm coming there. Now, if you talk about whether Fred Matiang'i can come to the elections and win the elections, if he is not tapped by any of the political bigwigs, the arrangers, the organizers of what happens, I don't think so. Not even former CJ can actually claim that, because by all means, you read the history from Kenyatta, Moi, Kibaki, and now, if you listen to the whispers in political corridors, you know very well that William Ruto did not become president because he shouted hustler. There are people who recommended him before. And Raila Odinga's votes have never, ever been counted correctly because there are people who sit somewhere and say, Atutaki hiende hivyo. So even for this one, unless we want to be naive, Fred Matiang'i has a support base called the Mount Kenya support base that is initially was propelled by Uhuru Kenyatta. But you can see now Kioni, there is rumor also even Gachagua himself, I mean, does not mind that kind of grouping as long as they remove who? William Ruto. And the same thing for Elder Maraga. I mean, you know, we have been around and we know whose friend are you. So we know very well that in order to disorganize a certain region in a certain manner, there has to be a potentially powerful person requested or motivated or influenced to stand as a presidential candidate. And yes, he can say what he has to say, but you see, we all have our minds and we know what situations mean.
And speaking of Kioni, the Secretary General of Jubilee, let's listen to what he said about this leadership, possible leadership of Matiang'i as 2027 president. Right. Requesting the Jeremiah Kioni's soundbite speaking regarding this particular matter of Fred Matiang'i to be the 2027 presidential bid.
Raila Amolo Odinga alikuwa amepatiwa 1.3 million votes kupitia Jubilee. Ruto kutoka kwa mlima alikuwa amepata 3.7 million votes. Fanya hesabu, 1.3 plus 3.7 ngapi? 5 million votes. Hizo wamezitoa wakasema hawataki. 5 million votes na zimeingia kwa Matiang'i.
Right. We can also get Senator Onyonka's soundbite regarding the same matters, political parties, if you have that.
Politics is based on arrangements and programs where political parties negotiate for what they take to their counties and areas. We have decided that as a community and as Kenyans, we are also going to set up our own political party. We are going to produce our own candidate who will negotiate with the president and all the other people who are running for political office in this country. And that candidate is none other Fred Okengo Matiang'i.
Right, gentlemen, Kisii Senator, talking about a new political formation being made, and I'll start with you, Mako, on this one. Does South Nyanza need a new political formation, for one, and how will it actually even survive all the way to 2027? Because every single electioneering period we see new vehicles come, and then they're dismantled in a way, or different parts from a different political party are fixed into this new vehicle, but then some make it to that electioneering period, but some do not. Will this one make it?
Well, at this stage, it would be very naive of any politician to start thinking about a political party. My last check, we've got about 90 political parties in Kenya. And the tragedy is that our political parties in Kenya are no more than a special purpose vehicle just for winning an election. I mean, you remember during the administration, when we were gaining independence, we had KANU and KADU. Later on, there was a merger. And then President Jomo Kenyatta did not pay attention to political parties, but President Moi paid huge attention to KANU, and KANU became very strong. Now, it appears in the Kenyan political space that our political leaders are actually more powerful than our political parties. That is why, if you start paying attention to a political party today, you'll be shooting in the dark. We are not in the US where you can say these are Republican Party or these are Democrats, or in the UK you have Labour or Conservatives. Yeah. In Kenya, on average, the person behind the political party is more powerful. I mean, if you remove Mr. Raila Odinga from ODM today, ODM is going to collapse. If you remove President Kenyatta from Jubilee, Jubilee is going to be a shell. In fact, when Jeremiah Kioni speaks, I'll not pay any premium attention to what he's talking about till the owner of the political party speaks. Okay. If you're talking about UDA, if President Ruto has not spoken, if Musalia Mudavadi has not spoken, if Wetangula has not spoken, then any other person speaking, you do not pay premium attention. That is something we need to run away from, because part of the reason why we don't have free, fair, and credible party primaries is because the party leaders have got overbearing influence. You know, in many parts of Kenya, if you come from, say, Rift Valley, and you are in UDA, the moment you win the party primaries, whether they are free, fair, and credible, you are going, probability of you winning the seat is extremely high. And this is something that experts in governance need to pay very strong attention. Because then the moment you go to the National Assembly, the person who has a blank check is actually your party leader. Because if you disobey your party leader, then you are indirectly communicating to him, and most of them are men, you are directly communicating to him that you are not interested in the next general election. Like right now, there are so many people within the ODM who have already been blacklisted. Within UDA, within Ford Kenya, who have been blacklisted, so that during the next election, again, they have to look for a very powerful political personality.
And that region that both of them come from, the South Nyanza, is a stronghold of Orange Democratic Movement, ODM. Nyeribo, do you think they can actually tilt again, this 2025 all the 27, 2 years, can they use that chance to even try and even tilt the followers and gain newer?
Yeah, there's a possibility, because you see now, like Dismas is saying, every single party is formed for the reasons which the head of the party has in his own minds. Yeah. And we have all known this now. So I don't think the people, for example, of South Nyanza, honestly, I don't think they will stick with William Ruto, for example, for the longest time. Immediately, the moment we approach the 2027 elections, they are likely to bolt out. Why? Because the common interests are not there, except for what they are calling broad-based government, for the cake they are getting right now. Once that is threatened in 2027, they go on their own way. But in terms of whether people should form formations from either South Nyanza, talk about Kisii more specifically, they want their own identity, because everybody now knows that for you to make a political bargain of anything, you need a party. And that's why you can see, while, you know, the likes of Fred Matiang'i are being, you know, prodded up by the central region, they are saying, irrespective of that, we don't want to go and just say we are in Jubilee. They want to form their own formation. If you look, like ODM, clearly it was in Azimio. But when they realized that they may not get what they want within Azimio, they quickly pulled out and gave their people to the government. So political formations are not an option, actually. They are inevitable entities in our country. Right. Because that is the only way you can now bargain for power.
Right.
Actually, you know, you cannot win any political seat in Kenya without having those strategic alliances. And for me, I would differ with Ishmael. I will not care about political parties. I'll go with the powerful political personalities. Because a political, I mean, Raila Odinga today can abandon ODM and he creates a party called United Kenya, and everybody will follow him to United Kenya. So you are better, safer, if you align yourself with these powerful political personalities.
Gentlemen and viewer, we sampled a few feedback from people, particularly in that region, in the South Nyanza, in Kisii. Let's listen to what some of them say. You can always also chime in on our numbers. 0793 267 279 is our WhatsApp number. What do you think about this effect, the Matiang'i Maraga effect? Let's listen in, then we come back.
In 2023 and 2024, protests which were carried out by the young generation, the GNCs, most of them actually 100% desired that Matiang'i should come and take the leadership of this country. Secondly, then that time Maraga was just at home, had retired honorably as a former CJ. Now it is incumbent of these foundations that I want to say Maraga should actually calm his nerves and become a legal advisor and an advisor generally to Matiang'i, because most of the population in the country, I have traveled almost 17 counties, and we meet the citizens of this country desiring and agitating for the Matiang'i presidency.
Hapa kuna kujezwa kisiasa. Maraga awachane mambo ya siasa. Maraga awachane mambo ya siasa. Sisi kama Wakisii tumemwambia awache mambo ya siasa kabisa. Kwa sababu ya nini? Former Chief Justice Maraga alisikia na amesikia hii sauti severally kwamba Matiang'i atasimama upresident come 2027. Yeye ametokea wapi sahi?
Sisi ni Nyamira, sisi tutasupport mtu mwenye ambaye watu wengine wamemsupport. Hatutaki malumbano, kila mwanasiasa akisimama anasema Matiang'i Maraga, hapana. Tunataka watu wawili wakalishwe chini, waongeleshwe na amani ikuwe Kisii.
Right, that is some sentiments of what people in that region are saying. Kisii as well as Nyamira. Gentlemen, you've listened to them, and some notable elements are cropping up. Some we have discussed so far, but some that I'd like us to venture into right now. And the last lady talks about a unity, sort of. Even the first gentleman talking about Maraga should be legal advisor of Matiang'i. This seemingly showing that both of them should work together in you know, you as a legal advisor, I as a presidential advisor. I'll start with you on this one. Can both of them work together? If so, what kind of effect will that have even in this region and in the country at large?
Well, as far as I see it, the more the merrier. Anybody in Kenya who's qualified to run for president, come out. So if you get 20 guys from one community, you get 100 guys from one community, please come out in truckloads, come to the marketplace and present your ideas. Now, the person who is going to win is the one who is going to have a strategic narrative which is aligned to the voters' selfish interest. So like what the leader suggested there, in my view, that is a complete waste of time. She has no capacity to say that go sit down and unite. I mean, is this a seat reserved for the community? Then you give us one candidate? No. I mean, it only happens during the election of the Pope, where the cardinals go to a room and they're told, you give us a name, you're not going to come out. So anybody who's qualified, let Kenyans be spoiled for choice, so that we can look at all the candidates. We look up at the lineup, then we say, this is the best matrix. And then Ishmael has, with alacrity, has suggested that President Ruto is going to lose South Nyanza. It's very early in the day, and I fear that his crystal ball is probably broken. It's very early in the day to just start saying that this region is going to bolt, this region is going to bolt. You know, part of what the broad-based government is doing is President Ruto is actually disrupting the status quo. Okay. Like, for instance, for the first time in Homa Bay, I mean, if you speak to the Honorable Peter Kaluma, he would tell you he's been an MP for Homa Bay Town for about 12, 13 years. But it's only because the president said he's going to Homa Bay for Madaraka Day. Now they're seeing tarmac roads. Okay. At the end of it all, they're going to have 130 kilometers of tarmac road. Right. So with this kind of disruptive development taking place, it's very easy to move the thinking of voters. However, again, as some other voters have demonstrated, they may not vote for you because of meritocracy. You've got so many members of the National Assembly who've gone the extra mile to deliver amazing results in their constituencies or in the elective areas. But as you approach the elections, you say, nimewaletea barabara ya lami, they tell you, chukua peleka kwako nyumbani. That is why you need to study the psychology of the Kenyan voter. Like, for instance, when you approach the 2027 election, a good politician will seek to understand what are the core issues that are making people have sleepless nights. Right. You know, you look at the demography, you don't even need to align or appreciate what the people want. You just develop a clever messaging. Right. That is why this election, as we said, is going to be won on data and messaging.
Right. Now, you know what my brother is saying, just if I may respond to that. Now Kenyans are smart. You're not taking any road to nobody. People know their rights. There is a national treasury. There is this much money. There is what goes to the counties. We need development. It does not, you see, the biggest problem happening currently as the president goes to regions and they says, I'm bringing this road, I'm doing this. It is none of his business, really, honestly. I mean, it is the business of Minister of Roads to ensure they announce which roads are being built where. But we are used to this mindset of if a person becomes president, he will bring A, B, C to us. No, this is wrong, actually. And now the Gen Z are fully aware that the tokens you are saying you are going to give us this, you are going to give us that, you are going to increase, good health services within our region. This is constitutional. It's mandatory on the leadership to ensure that our regions are developing. So to give people what belongs to them, and then start to say, we will bring this, we will give you that. Yes. Gen Z is aware that, and that's where you find people like Matiang'i actually. The way they come out, like, really, this kind of nonsense should not exist. That's what Gen Z are looking for. But somebody coming to tell you, I'm going to make a road over here, and I'm going to make sure here there's a dispensary. Why are you even saying it? And you saw Matiang'i when he was Minister of Education. He could go to a school and immediately implement whatever he needed to implement. He did not speak about it. Okay. So today we see people telling you, we will bring that, we will do ABC. That is wrong, actually. If you look at proper governance, that's it's unlawful to do that.
Right.
I'm banning to make
that's
this...
That's actually bribing people.
Your last comments, both of you. I'll start with you, Moko. Your last comments for both of them. Hopefully they're listening in tonight. Hopefully the people are listening in tonight and they're writing notes from your wise words for both of you. What kind of... You've definitely been talking about both of them curating a political strategy for right now all the way to 2027, if they're actually going to be on the ballot. How should this political strategy look like?
Well, again, this shouldn't be limited to these two candidates. Yes. Anybody who wants to run for any elective seat in Kenya, starting from MCA to the president, first of all, you must identify the needs, interests, and aspiration of your potential voters and craft a message aligned to their selfish interests. That works in theory, because we are told in economics, every human being works for his selfish interests. But when you come to real politics, there are people, in fact, it's the same Dr. Matiang'i who won Kenyans during the last election. There are people who have presented themselves for political office, others are members of Wash, others are thugs, and all these kind of things. And we understand some of them, in fact, won elections. So people go to vote, they know that this gentleman is he doesn't respect the rule of law and order, but they still vote for him. Mtuetu. Now, Ishmael has raised a very fundamental issue. In theory, the National Assembly distributes the national cake, and then nobody can influence it. But when you go to practice, the people who come with the initial budget estimates is the National Treasury. These issues then are discussed at the cabinet level. Which has the cabinet? It's the president, and the president's word influences what is done at the National Treasury. When these things go to the National Assembly, because of party whipping, majority of the members of the National Assembly will pass almost word to word. There will be very minimal movement of resources. Okay. That is why, if you go to regions in Kenya that have had presidents and you look at the economic outcomes, they are far superior. There are so many people in Kenya who say they don't know what power is all about because they don't know what power is all about. But there are parts of Kenya where you go, in fact, without naming names because you could get into trouble, there's one county in Kenya which has got probably 50% of the universities in Kenya, 50% of national schools, and 50% of healthcare. Why? Because you've had national leaders coming from that particular part of the world.
Okay, right. Nyuribo, briefly.
That is exactly what you are trying to change. I think you can see people, in the former regime who had power to do anything funny or messy. They chose not to do it. And you can see then we have a current leadership. I have had leaders themselves say there's a way we manage the election. So we can tell from what we have seen what is wheat and chaff, who can lead and who cannot lead. And I think the two gentlemen, it is too early in time to besmirk any one of them. They are capable, they can sell their agenda. But I think Kenyans are tending to lean towards the kind of philosophy and stability and strict leadership and proper governance they saw in Fred Matiang'i.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Ishmael Nyuribo, he's an advocate as well as a governance analyst, and Dismas Moko, he's a political risk analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen. As we have this conversation, former Chief Justice David Maraga, former Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i, both of these gentlemen, as they prepare, even to tell us their way forward, they're going to be held in high pedestal by Kenyans. We wait to see how this will shape up, and we're going to be right here with you as TV47 to give you all these political formations and how things shape up. I'm yours truly, Stanley Nyerungita. Roda Nyamai has been on the Sun Language Docket. Have yourself a wonderful Wednesday evening.